Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Total War Warhammer 2 Quest Battle walkthrough. In today's episode, we are going over the first quest battle for Alith Anar. The quest battle is called the Moonbow. First, I'll go over the details, then the enemy forces, and finally I'll discuss the strategy for this battle before we go into the battle itself. Even though Alith Anar walks into this willingly, the battle is still a trap. The Shadow King must use all of Loic's tricks to evade capture and make the Dark Elves pay for this brazen and doomed act. Like the Shadows, the King and his warriors are named after, the Asur must remain evasive and not get pinned down, for that is when the Dark Elves might actually get the upper hand. So now, let's go over the enemy forces. So we know that the enemy will have, of course, General, Sisters of Slaughter, 4 Dreadspear units, 4 Darkshard units, 2 Doomfire Warlock units, 3 Dark Riders, and 3 Dark Riders with repeater crossbows, and 2 Reaper Bolt Throwers. So that I'm expecting, since the details say that we walk into this battle willingly, I'm expecting this force to be ahead of us and our formation to be already facing them. But as we also notice, reinforcements are expected, and the details claim the battle is still a trap even though we walk into it willingly. So what I'm expecting, from just reading and looking at the enemy forces here, is that the enemy is going to have a force in front of us, but they're also going to try and surround us and hit us from the back. Now, I've played this battle multiple times, and I'm going to tell you what actually happens. This force that you see right here is actually ahead of you on a big hill. You have reinforcements that come in with plenty of cavalry units to try and distract them. Now, this distraction is very valuable and important. Now, this is because not only are they on a hill with artillery pieces, which can be very dangerous, but the enemy is preparing quite a genius plan. They have cavalry go on our left and right side to distract us. But that's not all. They have a second army, including a Hydra, that is right behind us. So what we're going to have to do is, while our reinforcements and allies are distracting, because they won't destroy the entire enemy force, but they'll weaken it for us, while they're distracting the force on top of the hill, we will have to quickly maneuver our troops to react to the threats on the left and right side, while, in the same time, reacting to the second army that's approaching from behind. So now let's get into this and let's see what the narration has to say. And as you see, the enemy is on top of a hill and we are surrounded by forests, making it easy for us to be surrounded by enemies without really seeing them. And these are the cavalry reinforcements, which is 421 troops. Let's start.
The Drucii scum seek to trap us. The fools think it is easy to snare the shadows. Disabuse them of this notion. We shall show these followers of the weak-willed brat, the mummy's boy that couldn't even tame a candle flame in the shrine of Asurian. I need to fill my quiver, then the Moonbow can sing again. So let these Drucii mongrels come!
Alright, so for our forces we have a noble, we have our general, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 6 spearmen units, 2 units of shadow walkers, 3 units of light armored archers, and 5 units of Northern Sea Guard with shields, 1 unit of Illyrian Reaver archers, and 1 unit of a Great Eagle. So as we see, our allies have their cavalry units, which are getting ready to strike the enemy forces in the back. Now, normally, this would be a very good position that I would recommend to try and hold. But unfortunately, we'll be forcing the enemy, well, unfortunately for them, we'll be forcing the enemy out of this position. So, normally what you want to do is just put your forces in such a way so you can easily climb the hill without attracting too much attention and without tiring yourself too much, and to easily engage the enemy. What we know is that the enemy is going to try and flank us with cavalry on the left and right side, while a second, very large army going in from the back to strike here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have our spearmen units to go on the left and right side of our formation to react to the cavalry. Now I will have some, I believe I'll probably have the shadow walkers or the archers, either as fine behind or in front for a moment, in front of the spearmen, to allow them to shoot at the cavalry approaching. In the meantime, I'll also have my Lothern Sea Guard to form a line facing behind us into the forest to counter the enemy's large army. I will have my generals in the close vicinity to assist as much as possible. And finally, we will use the cavalry and Great Eagle to climb up the hill, or mountain, whatever you want to call it. Now, the purpose of this is to get rid of the enemy artillery and inflict as much damage to the enemy archers. Although our allies will be a great distraction, and they will do plenty of damage, the enemy is well prepared, so we will have to help them out as well. So we're going to have to charge up this hill and take out the artillery pieces and possibly weaken the archers. So now let's start building up the formation. Now they usually come at this slanted angle from the left side, so we're not going to form a straight rectangle, we're going to make some diagonal lines to prepare for these attacks. Now normally you don't want to be in such a closed formation, especially with spells involved and a Hydra, but in this case, because we don't know the exact position where the enemy is coming from, this usually makes up for it, because the losses will be much smaller, because we're being prepared for as much of this as possible. Now the point of having the Lothern Sea Guard pointing the back direction is because there's going to be a lot of troops there, and the Lothern Sea Guard also have bows that they can use, which is a great advantage. This will allow them to shoot the enemy before engaging in hand-to-hand combat, and luckily for us, they are quite good at hand-to-hand combat. So now with our formation set up, and our archers, we're going to try and keep them in the center so they can easily maneuver around to prepare for any attack on any side, but also so they are protected from any incoming attacks. Now, normally you want your troops to be walking into formation, but when you don't know when the attack is going to come, you want to run in, especially if it's close by, so you can just get it out of the way faster. Now when going up this large hill, I'm going to have them walk at one point so they don't tire themselves out, but also so we give some time for our allies to arrive. As you see, the formation is forming up nicely. So we are now getting prepared to fight the attack that's going to come from behind, but we are also ready to counter any cavalry that come on the left and right side. And just in case they decide to go around the front, we have a few units waiting for them too. Now what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to react to the enemy troops very quickly, because there's of course two armies, and whenever you're dealing with two armies, you just have to focus on one, break it up as quickly as possible, and then head out to deal with the second. So that's what we're going to be doing here. We're going to focus on taking out the second army that's coming from behind, and then we can easily finish off the broken or remaining pieces of the first army. And as you see, our allies are moving up, which is very good. They're moving up with their Illyrian Reavers, which is going to be a pretty good attack, especially if they hit in the back. So now what we want to do is we want to move up our Great Eagle and Cavalry in such a way so we can take out the enemy's artillery units. What we also want to do is try to take out the enemy archers, the Dark Shards, but that won't always be possible. But we still want to maximize damage, and especially before enemy reinforcements arrive. And as you see on the map, the second army is kind of arriving with their skirmishers on the left and right side already here. Now, I would recommend sometimes moving up a little bit, but if you're a bit nervous, then staying where you were is a very good choice as well. Now, this is because by moving up, you're getting farther from the forest, so you have more distance with your archers, so you can shoot at the enemy faster. and for a longer period, which usually inflicts more damage. Now we're not doing this time because we're not very prepared for the enemy's movement. We don't know how well the first army is going to do. So what we want to do is just keep our formation so we can react accordingly. So for example, if a lot of the enemy forces were to survive, then it's a better idea to stay close by to where we started so we can have as much range over there. But if few of them survive, then we want to get as close to that hill so we have as much distance between the second army as possible.
Spearmen, up forward. Noble. Without question.
Now what I'm trying to do with my cavalry and Great Eagle is just to weaken the what I consider the most important troops and strongest troops, which include the artillery and archers. So my Great Eagle is just dealing with the enemy archers, while my cavalry finish off the artillery. And as you see, we are quite effective against this force with our spearmen. But as you see, the second army has begun to arrive with their big Hydra. So what we want to do is we want to have our Lothern Sea Guard focus fire. Now you can just have them shoot anywhere, but focusing fire on the Hydra is what I'd say probably most important. I'm also going to move our Shadow Walkers closer so they can also fire. Now firing at any of the units will be helpful, of course, but we want to focus fire on the Hydra, which is a very strong unit. Now, of course, our Great Eagle and Cavalry are now routing. Now, that was to be expected because we did rather sacrifice them. All they were to do was just to continue distracting the enemy army for a longer period, to buy us more time, but also to try and weaken out the strongest units. So now that the first army has arrived, the second army has arrived, we're going to try and engage them. Now this includes trying to flank them, because flanking is always a good idea. So what I'm trying to do is oh good, the Hydra is down. So what we want to do is as soon as it's down, we want to focus our attention to something else. It may be still alive, but it is permanently routing. So it is no longer much of our worry. Now we want our archers, of course, to stay out of combat. I'm going to send in our general and our noble because we need as much help as possible to defeat this army as quickly as possible. Now, seeing as this isn't much of a threat, we can have some of our Lothern Sea Guard units to stay back, not only so they can help deal with the first army that's starting to arrive here, but also just to give some backup protection from their arrows. Now we want to protect our archers, so that will include putting them behind our spearmen. Now unfortunately our spearmen are being attacked by cavalry, so what we're going to do instead is just engage the enemy troops to try and rout them before they arrive. So now I'm going to slow down the time to try and explain it better. So what we're doing is we're turning around our archers to try and counter the enemy attacks that are approaching from the hill. We're also trying to use our spearmen to try and block any attacks that could be threatening to our archers. In the meantime, we are continuing to finish off the second army that had just arrived. Now, unfortunately, we didn't kill many of their archer units, and they can easily weaken us, so we want to try and get rid of that as quickly as possible. And as soon as the unit starts routing, we need to immediately move on.
will be done. I shall. By Assyrian, we advance to the fray. Ulthwan, it is done. Without fail.
Now normally you don't want to have your spearmen chasing these archers and cavalry because it usually just ends up getting your men killed. But right now it is quite necessary to do so because we are trying to fight on multiple fronts and we want to successfully do all of that. So we need to buy some extra time. So sometimes just sending out a weak unit to die isn't, unless it's a very special unit, it's sometimes a necessary and sometimes important thing to do. I would prefer them to stay alive and fall back, but if they fall back at this point, they're just going to get shot in the back, which is a weaker spot, making them an even easier target to be taken down. Now, normally you want to try and keep your troops close by to react to all of these threats. This time I separated them a bit just because to buy as much time for our archers to shoot the enemy troops. But normally you want to try and keep them close by if possible so you can react as a big force instead of separating them and having one unit trying to react to an entire attack.
We will obey. We away. For Ulthwan.
So now the majority of the enemy force is routing and the battle seems to be in our favor. But we will continue fighting as well as possible. Now I'm not worried about engaging the Shadow Walkers because of one reason. They're very good at melee. So having them charge in here is actually a pretty good idea. Now normally I try to keep alive such good units, but this is a quest battle with all of these troops not really mattering much just to achieve victory. It won't make much of a difference, just the number of casualties. So normally I'd try to keep them back and safe, but this time we just need to regroup, send them out as a target so we can easily regroup our troops. So now what we're going to do is we're going to try and slightly regroup our troops. We've gotten quite thin in our We've been quite spread out and we're getting quite thin in numbers. So our weakest units, I'm going to try and keep them back so they stay alive just in case. I'm sending our strongest units to engage the enemy units that are the biggest threat. Now although these units are routing, I'm going to continue chasing them because until they have the skull icon as well, they can always come back. And we don't want that. We don't want to do all that hard work and to have them rout and only for them to just all of a sudden come back and be a big problem, because we'll be facing away. So this battle is practically won. There's not much left to do, and the majority of the enemy force is either dead, routing, or almost dead. So now I'm just going to go over the strategy once more of what we did here today. To win this battle, there's multiple things you can do. You can just try and form a square-like formation with your spearmen on the left and right side and Lothern Sea Guard on the bottom, archers in the center and the Shadow Walkers on the top. And you can put that formation anywhere you really like. I preferred to put it right next to where we started because we didn't know how many of the enemy soldiers would survive the attack, so just in case we didn't manage to kill off all the artillery, we'd still have plenty of distance before they'd arrive and we'd have to deal with them. The problem with that plan is that, as we saw here today, we were still finishing off the second army, and the first army was already getting here. And by doing that, we would have easily taken them out on the hill and then had plenty of time to await the second army. Now the second strategy we can do is of course moving up the hill and taking the enemy out, and the good thing of that is that you can have plenty of distance before the second army arrives, allowing you to take out the first army with plenty of time to react to the second. Unfortunate, and it gives you more distance for your archers to shoot at them. Unfortunately, if you don't have your men run, you might not make it in time, and the enemy might still have their artillery and majority of their archers still alive, which will make them, your troops, very easy targets while trying to move up the hill. So it's a very dangerous mission if done incorrectly. And judging by how far the distance actually is, you might not make it in time. That's why I also sent the Cavalry and Great Eagle. So now let's end the battle and see the results. Our losses were 735, our allies lost 359, and the enemy lost 1,107 and 610. So the second army that had 782, I'm going to guess that that was the army that came out of the forest. Now, if you looked on the hill, the army seems so small because the units coming from the left and right sides were the Dark Riders and the Doomfire Warlocks, which were they were with the first army that was on the hill, but they were actually coming from the left and right side trying to flank us. So this battle could have gone a lot better. We could have put our formation in a different area, a different spot. We could have organized our troops in a different manner, and we could have reacted a whole lot of different ways. But judging as there were a lot of unknowns, we didn't know if we'd make it in time, we didn't know where the enemy was coming from, we were being surrounded. This was a fairly good outcome. There's always a possibility to take many fewer casualties. Unfortunately, this time it did not occur in such a way. So I hope this video was helpful, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. I hope you keep watching my videos, and I really hope you learn something from them and you get better as a commander and general in these battles yourself. Hopefully this was helpful and it really helped you beat this battle yourself or beat similar situations. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you watching again next time. Goodbye.